every information has a source, and every information source guides its perspective and guides its intentions. There's a great book, Freakonomics, which discusses takes like normal sociological behavior and takes an economist's stats look at it, and he shows that every behavior is informed by some type of motivation. And if you start to recognize the motivations, you can understand people's behavior. Being able to stay aware of people's motivations, or any information's motivation, is critical in understanding how you can process it. I've had people say before, like, when they tell me something, I ask, where did you hear that? Or do you have a link for that? And I'm curious to look into that. And they say, you don't trust me? And it's like, oh, no. I absolutely trust you in that you received this information and you believe it. And I fault you not. I mean, you are a trustworthy person. However, if this is not something you witnessed yourself, if this is information you read or someone told you, well, then that is part of what I need to evaluate if it's something that I'm going to embrace as truth, or embrace in whatever way. That is especially critical and especially obvious during political season, or as I like to call it, icky time. The TV, I accidentally turned on the TV a little bit this week, and it's like advertisement, all about politics. And it's crazy how negative the ads are. And it's unfortunate because the amount of money that goes into it and the amount of research, you know that they work. You know that if you play music like this and have an announcer that talks about the person who was let out of jail on their watch, and and they have a bad picture of somebody like in the middle of eating a sandwich, and they look kind of fat, and you're like, and they say they want to take your taxes that potentially could be used to abort babies. It's like, oh God, it's so lowest common denominator. And it says, paid for by blah, blah, blah. But how can you even understand what those things mean? I mean, it's the Committee to Restore Justice in America is a group that was founded by, the guys who sit on the border and, try to pick off illegals as they go through. So it's crazy. And so this is a time when you really need to, it's actually a good exercise, because everything that we are given is got that same filter of motivation inspiring the information. This happens constantly in our life, where we are given information, and it's not always so black and white as two sides, yes and no. It's values that we're given. The whole commerce system, the whole climb the corporate ladder, the whole acquire stuff, the whole everything, every status quo value that we have has been layered on to us from a similar place of exterior motives. And so when the story of our culture goes in one way or the other, we believe it based on the information that we've gotten, not really understanding or recognizing the motivation behind that information. Am I getting too esoteric? Let me give you, this is what made me start thinking about this. I had lunch with a good friend, and he told me, you know what? And he was almost really struggling with this, even saying this out loud. He's like, he goes, I'm not doing very well financially right now. I'm making about half to a third of what I made 2 years ago. And this year has been wonderful. He said, the economy has been so good to me and my family. And by saying that, he was saying, I know what this cultural story is, that if you make less money, if your 401k dips, that's bad, and that's a terrible thing, and you need to be upset. But he was saying, you know what? We don't go out as much. We used to go on a lot of trips. Now we're staying together as a family. We eat in all the time now, as opposed to going out. We're spending tons of quality time. Our connections are stronger than ever. My family is more connected than it's ever been. I mean, this has been fantastic. And as he's saying this, I was like, oh, so giddy. I was like, Why don't you hear that on the news? Because there's a story. There is a motivation. There are forces at work that are far more obscure and hidden than the yes on this prop and no on that prop schools. They are the corporations of our culture. They are the power structures of our culture. It's not okay to be fine with an economy dipping. And yet here is an example of someone saying, wow, this was awesome for me. We get into this place where we get attached to the image of what we think either happiness is or success is or security is. And then we chase the image. And we lose sight of that these images are merely pictures trying to depict emotions or senses of feeling that we want or that we're trying to return to or we're trying to get to. We don't really want a Porsche. We want to feel cool and powerful and whatever. Actually, I don't know why you'd want a Porsche, but let's say that's it. You don't really, want this particular partner. You want to feel wanted and connected and loved and those things. And so when we get too attached to the picture, then we fall into that trap of thinking that anything else is wrong. And I love the line in the Course in Miracles that says, we never know if we're in advance or retreat. We just don't have the vantage point as a human. I think that's an incredibly evolved and important perspective, that you can never know if something is good or bad for you. Only time can give you a glimpse of that. Everyone, I believe, and that the more you live, the more you have these experiences of situations where at the time you think they're the worst possible thing that could happen. Maybe it's you lose a job. Maybe somebody leaves you, a partner leaves you, or a romance ends, or you lose a wallet, or you rip your pants, or there's a million things that are not according to our picture of what we think should be happening, our expectations, our attachment to an outcome. And so we get really frustrated. And yet who has not had the experience of having a relationship end, being like, no, and then a year later going, thank God that I'm not still with that person. Or thank God I'm still not at that job. Thank God I had my pants ripped, had to duck into that store, I met that person. Now that's an example of not being attached to the image of what you think is supposed to happen and merely surrendering to the flow. If you let go of right, wrong, and simply start to think about in alignment, out of alignment, then something happens not what you expected. You can go, I don't know if this is right or wrong. I'll just now start trying to figure out which is towards alignment. And then whatever happens is perfect.
You only live once. Enjoy the color.